Thank you very much, Kempo, for a talk that I think was extremely suited to this environment in Cambridge, where the issues he was talking about of depression are very widespread, depression and other mental health issues, and where the interest in engaging with mindfulness and other aspects of Buddhist practice is also growing. So it's very helpful, I think, to all of us to hear a talk which suggests concrete ways in which that can be done. So has anybody got questions for Kempo?
谢谢。弟子万分荣幸，深深感恩大智文殊舍利菩萨的慈悲精彩开示。南无阿弥陀佛，扎西德勒。弟子想请教恭请尊贵的大恩上师索达基堪布上师。弟子感觉弟子一天天在长大，但是自己的父母亲在一天天老去，在衰老。那么作为一个在家居士，如何去好好的尽孝和修行，念一些什么经文和咒语，才能让现世父母得到幸福安乐，减轻病痛？他们去世的时候，让他们能保佑他们往生的佛国净土这些好的地方。因为弟子感觉对父母的爱，将来就可以转化为对众生的大愛。谢谢感恩大智文殊菩萨开示。南无阿弥陀佛。
네, 그런 것도 다 밤마다 된다 소리 거기 나가서 뽑아서 참마가 되네 말는 뭐 돈지 미래가 많이 똥야만 돈지 다 많이 뭐 보는 거 장나 티니가요 말에.
Chanting Om Mani Padme Hum is a very good method.
Your Holiness, I don't know the proper way of calling you like he did, so. I was once exposed to some of the teachings from Zen Buddhism called Heart to Heart, which apparently also part of the Tibetan Buddhism, and with the master, with the teacher. And I mean, I've never felt that, and I just wonder how can someone have that kind of experiences with no reservation or doubt? Or taking one step back, actually, does everyone, if we practice, need a master, need a teacher? Because Buddha didn't seem to have a teacher when he was practicing. And the other question I have is, I spent a few days in Dharamshala in India last year, and in Tibet has this image of a pure third pole, but when I was there, and not to be offensive, there were trash pretty much everywhere. I mean, it could be from the tourist, but it didn't seem to just go away, or it didn't seem to have the same kind of image as one had in Tibet. Do you think it's about the doctrine, the Buddhism, that might need some reform or update, or does that have to do with any of the religions? Thank you.
다트와 당보 베나 그 상제 존던데 라마 메빠 말에 라마 요파양 송으래 야 츠르몽은 그 라마 때니다 샹집 그 셈곰르베 양 송으래 그 쇼치가 원도 제나 베나 상제 따위 홍보를 논보지게나 그 라마 마텐나 양 저게다 옛나야 대 당선강내 급나 된자위 그 강사스가 하장 공부인 바래.
While it's theoretically possible to obtain Buddhahood without relying on a teacher, in our current age, the kind of people who are in fact able to do this are very few, are very rare indeed.
드네 저와니바데나 드네 야거그 삽숑가리 샹숑나양 다리 근데 까니 요차 몽보요래 nga 야거란 좀용래 드네 호숑나양 몽보요래 더 위숑나양 다리 까니 요차 몽보요래 다때 마엠바가 nga인데 인지다 파란스 너소토니 기론디야 다 사창가리 덕배 야보누 옛날 사장 가리나 대지 가르니다나 더가 다르니즈 되네 페르나 너쇼거 자르금든지 군통거 사차 있나요 가레나 빼 좁은도 따띵이 되나 탁지도 출금지라 요즘 말해서 암거 지르잖아 와수 상점 출된 상점 출된 정도견도 저 주방은 운이 있네 더 상점 출된 구지들이다 옛날에 그런 거 원도 잠보는 거뭐 정말 남자리 연주되면 또 지금 출 권함들이 요반 말해
Campbell has also travelled to India. It's certainly the case that in some areas the public hygiene is not so excellent. However, this isn't, whilst in general the situation in European countries seems to be somewhat better, it's also the case that there are places where there is rubbish lying around and all of that kind of thing. So to say that this is clearly, this is solely or exclusively or largely related to religion is probably not a very accurate way of viewing things.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk. Apropos your mention of depression and Buddhism, when I was 17, I went very far into depression. I spent 6 months in a psychiatric ward, self-harm, suicide attempt, the whole 9 yards. And afterwards, I obviously realized that the way in which I was thinking about things and the way in which I had constructed my method of reasoning was quite simply not working for fairly obvious reasons. And so I set out over a period of years to repair that and to improve myself to the point where I was fully functioning, and that is something that I've kept going. And this led me to meditation about a year ago, which has had incredible effect. It has really added a huge benefit to my life. And I was wondering, have you had the experience of depression leading to, as a motivating force towards Buddhism and meditation, or even as an accelerating, motivating factor? Thank you.
Was that a question in relation to Campbell's personal experience or what he has observed in people he has had encounters with?
Personal experience, if it's relevant, though I don't imagine so. Encounters with others, or even a theoretical interest.
Okay.
데르타비 나빠스르고는 자고 더니 가방 나마 동서그 나니 연롱 와르다 나 더니 지 샘금거 만칸 나가양 손나 타나다리 지 뇽바가 다리 만칸 나간 좀 용켄 다 디모 가레 베낭이 고시니 더니 흑사르게와 베다리가 작친도 요래 다 고소이나 더가 다 샘금거 나뜨근 종네 있더니 그런 흑사삼네 타모 알아서 그랑수 접삼래 다 마야 만본 혼래 캬버드 아메리카네 고메만 견던 혼 로르가 잠들에 드니 지마다레 다링이 지긴디 흥강도 드니 범처 찍던디 다 데마터다 나때 폭맘용 왔다바다레 샘금 짱상 송도 드니 그런 중이나 지금 나마가 생긴데 야라 지금 조상에나 막도제면야 지금 님종다나 대비전다나 지금 타라라 돈다 니라가 출그 옥주 침보토야 삼제야 메카다 옛날에 그런 거 지금 샘대 데니 종때 당 오늘 전에 그거 다 멍우마가 총을 그런 게 견데세가 요래 다 권디 흥강도 그 권도 없는 세가 요래 다 더던 잡아가 야뭐 잠바레 조야 다 범매들에 범매레 조야나 다대 동처럼 그 나건 나이다 지마 상등 고메다나 되는 가수 추적하는 그 추장에다나 작성을 다 뜻수인 다 나나비 내급난 코리 등을도 운이 전에 그 냠섬 녀소 단이 좀 땡코라니 임종제다 지금 몰라 할이지 레라보 자원드세 다 땡자 냠녀 피몬보요래 알라 땡자 샷고니나 니마 몬보라 샤나 다른 추적직 너서 그런 샤죠 그 레콘 말했는데 되니나 다가 다 피몬보요래
Yes, Campbell has certainly witnessed many people, not so many people that 1 hour would not be enough to, describe them all, but many people who have, as a result of suffering depression, through encountering Buddhism, encountered great relief, having healed their symptoms completely, some people, one person that Campbell knows well is quite a famous media personality in China. Now, their benefits were not necessarily in terms of a really heightened desire to achieve liberation through the Dharma, but certainly very positive life transformation. On the other hand, he's also encountered many people who, through having overcome the worst of their depression anyway, have found benefit in terms of their Dharma practice, in terms of, the ability to arouse renunciation. Other aspects of religious practice have certainly gained great benefit and stimulation. He said that there are just so many, he's had so much experience with this.
Campbell, thank you very much for a presentation which I believe covered many topics that were of great interest. But I would like to stop at the last point which was mentioned here, depression. One, by listening to or reading Western reports, medical reports, of the rise of depression and mental illness, not only in this country, which you mentioned, but all over the West, the United States, and the westernized world. One would believe that it is somehow a flaw of the individual biology or something genetic that is arising in human beings. I think that would be an incorrect conclusion, and that is the passive view that one can discern in the medical and psychological establishments that only treat the individual as an individual. But the rise does not mean that we are changing genetically in any way. I think what is happening is the dissolution of traditional bonds, tribal bonds, if you wish, within the family, friendships, extended families, and so the individual becomes more and more individualized, or as you said, more isolated and inflates the sense of self. I wonder what your view is on that, and whether we are actually facing a social epidemic more than something which is an individual flaw. Thank you.
nabshogda khar shogna yang tangsang tongser gnat te gemsum zar ka hajang mongbo yokor semkham rigba ga chilewa chuina te zar kor te jin de mang ga chilewa chuina korang su zar kor re tan nge te na zu de sem gnat te la sem gar man de kar chiare sang chirezena ngachu libu nat te la ina chi 종합 지역의 그 만바 정거 와네 레다는 심 릉거 심데 ndapabyewe 그 회는 직된 그 감서 코랑 도 척척바이 나라는 딱코 도나 돈당 메크 사메다나 릉거 랑사 릉거 랑 상고 다 텔라다리 심기 나텔라 심기만 회나 생각 노야다노 상동 고야다노 대전도는 지금 잠판 접겨 세마라 로보이 잠판 접기나 당운이 지금 나 전부 좀 말해. 엄마 나 추바즈 근원이 있나? 추좀 컨스 근원이 있나? 나 전부 좀 말해. 지금 싸움로 뭐 통사즈다 되면 말해. 인디 실나 몽을 건지다나 때때나 녜때나 소도 다리 셈을 흉아 레네네 때나다 셈아 때니다나 앞자르교도 소래 막도 되면 지금 다 겸상다나 진속과 식진가 요요래다나 다때 싸와 듣고 말에 소다리 머라랑 수수양 생긴고가 다 쇼는고가 낫지래 야 출그 관두시나 제트로 잔즈 건지다나 다 대랑에 출그 제트로 금중공대 멋있
Campbell says that yes, it's clear that there are social and environmental factors that contribute to depression. But if we're going to be talking about a cure for it, he really feels that because it is an affliction of the mind, that the best cure for this is also a cure of the mind or a cure for the mind. And for that reason, he would prescribe the methods that he has described tonight, including meditation, the different contemplative meditations and mindfulness meditations, etc.
Thank you for the presentation. So my questions is related to the one of the most fundamental theories of Buddhism, which is the emptiness and no willingness. I guess the Chinese translation is 无欲无求. My question is, so like we are all here at Cambridge. We all have our own motivation. We all have our own drive, and then we all have our own willingness to achieve. Do you think it's actually something that conflicts with the fundamental idea of like the emptiness and no willingness theory of the Buddhism? If you think so, like how should we deal with the conflict?
Campbell says there is no conflict at all.
Garame pi gimsen kare sena perna nga chu nanchu ger tongba yin ze kit tani tata ge tani nga chu choa ton de nirwa tela zomba shimergo tela mugir mergo tela tani puksum mergo tendra ze ke ton de mare shirtong ge shinong ge chu tamchi ge ranjin htana wawe sona ter tongba ni rezenre Tate, Matson number mine bagande, Perna, Ungukum Rigbawa, Ungukum Rigbawa, Yinaya, Tangatsun the Ungubo religion than the Chen Chamedavad. Teni, Pernandea, Tari, Chashi, Shikiron, than Teni, Da, or the Chamekavar, the Tansan, Tena Ungukum Rigbawa, again, and the Tonga than and the Ranjan Matrapazu Dokyore. Tina, Matsu Mubo Damja Ranja Matraba Yenaga and so Murgotia Yomare. The Schnansera, Schnansera on the Shena, Matsun Sur Gonare, a retana, Matsun Surin, she in the you, Nitzenda, Chirezena, Tombare, Gemar Tower, Manam Tavere. Then when you go Mato Zemanea, Chi Ta Nitzernayan and the Martoni Ranjan Chance Travel, that ten or at Yenaya, Matsu, Soaga, the Zolin Tamchet. Darjik tamchad kasang da natsra yore te ngarwa putzam ya yo mare dansan tsama ge titana de ngum shi ngum korin yo da pem mo yo.
The reason that I say that there is no conflict between the two is that when we speak of emptiness, we're really talking about the fundamental nature of phenomena. This is not a doctrine that claims we should not have goals in life, that we should not carry out particular tasks, that we should not strive towards things, that we should not be effortful. In actual fact, the fact that as Buddhists we regard the ultimate nature of phenomena to be empty is something that essentially describes the nature of phenomena. It's something that we need to have an understanding of, but at the same time, physicists would also describe the nature of phenomena in a similar way, insofar as they describe the various things that we conventionally designate with names as being comprised by molecules and atoms in a constant state of flux. So I feel that this is actually something that a lot of people have a misunderstanding of. They hear the word emptiness, etc., and think, oh, that means as a Buddhist I can't have goals, I shouldn't strive towards things, but in actual fact this isn't the case.
Okay, it should be 在西德勒喷身卓巴秀. Okay, so I was born in a Buddhism family and my mom is a Buddhist. So I say the mantra of the Omara Bhajanada for 1,000 times every day. So I actually earn a lot of help and benefit from it, and I think that's why I can got in Cambridge. So I'm just wondering that as a teenager, how do you balance and arrange your time between saying the mantra and sit in the meditation and also doing your studies from books in the university? Like which one is more important? And thank you.
In fact, there are many people who have come to Cambridge who didn't recite the Manjushri mantra.
다 네 시르던 거 가서 뭐라나 소소요. tani chu drumna chu 저탄가양 roluk mambo yore. Tani tsoar kirnayang tsoar kirluk mambo yore. Tende ngatsu mo zigenda paratana chi tsama chigbanare. Inayang chi mo rangrangla pena ngatsu bobala tazire longwa rena chaligre la shkarigre ze. Longba mandrawa mambo na taga mo chalig mandrawa na shkarig mandrawa mambo yore. Tedang rawa janga ngatsu chudrumna yang pena na sanji bagana yang tane ta thaba chembo dana tane ta logic thaba dan tane mambo yore tane yang thaba dare logic thaba nana yang chaba chog yang chudrum manra mambo yore te ne na ta chude nyamslena choran kanre gana choran tena tenda yagbore samna zo tenda chinaya yagbo injere samgoyo 때 로트라고 로종다는 띠니가 있나 네 때나 조다를 로종 실고가 로종 신우 저도 되네다가 다양 알아봤던 거다네나 지금 조건을 말했더니 그래제 때 조도 그 곰자거로 곰자긴다 땅가 있나 그 조 로종도 로종 시지도 조에 있더니 곰다는 때 소야를 로디즈 톤디 되네 곰자게 tene kandon dojin da lo yara che ta yara yang rabzi yara tondi tene ko kandon donji na tartak zu lojong shigi na gamro.
Campbell said to start with that, in this world there are many different ways of practicing the Dharma, just as there are many different lifestyles, in fact. So in order to say that one size fits all, this really isn't how things work, even though, of course, yes, we're all humans, etc. In actual fact, we are all individuals. So really, in terms of what's best for you, I guess, in many ways, depends on really what you like the most out of those things. In general, though, as a young person, you're a young person, you're at school. From Campbell's point of view, probably the most important thing for you at the moment is your studies and your Dharma practice you should do on the side from that. From his point of view, usually meditation practice is something that people can, begin perhaps a little bit older than, at a somewhat slightly more older age. That's not a big deal. But probably where you are at the moment, you should put your studies as your first priority.
就是我想请教上师一个问题，这个问题可能也是比较个人，就是在生活中我们可能每个人都会遇到很多事情，然后遇到很多人，但是有些人可能会给你带来一些危害或者是伤害，然后我想知道就是应该采取怎么样一种心态？因为如果说是无限度的宽容，是不是其实对这个人也没帮助？然后我想知道，如果说是采取自我保护或者就是让这个人有比如说得到一些制裁或者怎么样的办法，是不是会给自己带来一些不好的果报或者是恶报？谢谢。
실동에 아주 배 그양 보시나 다 그양 데라티니 데니 잔라양 판바게 침범 종지 랑라양 니바 몸종 파yon 침보 요래 옛날에 무슨 그 다른 거 탐케다 시럽랍되니 데니 다 바로라 지금 반반 종의 타압 zon고 건조지래 데나 양무라는 소소양 베나네 처럼뭐 요라 베나 파마 어떤 법칙들이야 빼그 양보 최소나 그런 거 데니 다 시가다나 건슈 된 가래가 타나양 초력선 로주 인카요래 다 때다가 수산밥 zon군이나 파로로라 총주시 비체도 샹가래 지나야 초래 데라니 바야 요 말에
In general, extending forgiveness and tolerance to others is something that brings great benefit to them, and it also brings great benefit to ourselves. At the same time, however, one needs to really assess the situation with wisdom. So just as the relationship between parents and their children. If parents are too permissive or with their children, then in actual fact it may lead to dangers of their own children maybe becoming a little bit wayward. So with the motivation of the best interests of the other, it's fine for us to adopt appropriate measures. Kempo just said if everyone could do their best to ask their questions in a concise way, and he will answer them in a concise way, and that way more people will have an opportunity.
Yeah, thank you very much for your insightful teaching. So I study sociology, and interestingly, like depression is also regarded as one of the main themes of sociology. And in sociology, like many scholars on many empirical researches have been conducted in terms of depression, and we like usually regard it as social as well as individual, because, for example, the modern father of sociology, Durkheim, in his insightful book, he argues that depression or suicide is actually a social phenomenon. So I wonder whether a combination of social and individual recipe is necessary to deal with depression, or not just in terms of individual cure. Yeah.
Shina shitsog bag wang de shine na de mda rang shong kam mda chulig bar mdang tare ge tene tam mla so ba ge de jera mo zu shitsog bir kam na yang she yore de ne na de mo gir de yang na mo gir ke sem dam de yodni de shitsog ge chashi zre ya 네츠는 가레도 짐츠나 담바이나 그 마블랑이야 탐메바야 따바 기로레 데나 저런 거 다른 상로 집도 땅이나 맞수 먹게급 상로 교통 대양 시속을 비차시 시속과 차시즈레 시속과 차시를 접하다 시속과 다리가 다 샘근나티 샘급 주나요 먼저 사요지 말했어
Campbell regards the individual mind or the collective individual minds as clearly a part of society. Sociology, investigating the relationship between the individual and its environment, religion or the environment or whatever, clearly sees the individual as in or formed by and in interaction with all of these things. So your suggestion, therefore, that a method of addressing depression would address things at both these levels, Campbell thinks is quite acceptable.
나랑 근데 뉴진 법전에 따리 대 추저탕 찍다리 신속을 받아만 이거 금제라고 가서 그냥 로종 신인 근데 나 신속을 받아서 인ser 척결해
Campbell said a couple of days ago he attended a class at Oxford University. It was his first class, his only class, and it actually was a medical anthropology class. And so he said, yeah, well, so you could actually perhaps call me a bit of a medical anthropologist.
Meditation can be used to reduce stress and reduce depression. But don't you think that focusing, using meditation just for this purpose is an ignorance of the more profound teachings of the Buddha? Because Buddha said that everything is impermanent and we can create a calm and happy mind, but this can change. We can create a better world, but the world is also impermanent. It is coming to an end. And Buddha also said that the world is not something that exists for real. It is us who give a false value to the world. World is of non-self. So shouldn't we also strive to understand the non-self and empty nature of the world in addition to using meditation for mundane purposes? Thank you.
The gore da yana ta tari nga chu ti shawa sam tu nat the seru chetrewa da yana yang chu kang rim na yang chu mungden de kang yana te chu kha ta len ko re da yana da namji ge ner kan nan ta tig da me 도게다 타라토키오 샘징거 돈줍교 대연레다 양 ner급스 샘징거 natser교 등을ser교 때 다리 쪼어레
Campbell does think it's important to strive towards the higher or more ultimate aims of the Buddhist teachings, and including the meditational methods. However, tonight's focus was really on mental illness from Campbell's point of view, and in general, when we're talking about applying meditational methods to result in benefit for people who do suffer from mental illness, then we're talking about, we are emphasizing the temporary or proximate benefits of the meditation tradition. But clearly the more ultimate aims are something that can and ideally would also be strived towards.
Can we have one last question? Okay, 2, but keep it very short, please.
Sorry. Campbell 부채 금금장 nga 송은가 랩공의 용노가 단단히 다른지나 어찌 롭수 그거는더니 롭종의 거노 인더니다 다들랑이 nga 지즈고노 다들랑 그디가 회치근당 뜬당 제가 제즈메 그랑 다른 걸 롭가 롭수 그거 디 종아의 거노 당한 지즈고노 다 다른지나 어쩌고 그나니 인지나 시바마즈다 루가다 루트그 무스크타니다 곰비 나송이다 오치 칠크쿠르 롭종리니 테코가 나랑가 용노고티가 곰 디아가난가 곰바나 인지나양 달로니 심트무스강니다 세이 루가 트기트무 무스크타 삼치 zikta gombina jogzikta thi tra cha zinte ko kata te ta chu zonga zgre se kmetni ngen zgre ta se kmetata tigtani jina ta tar ga sukhon jina sigta ochu chil kharmo mani ta chu sukhonani ta ochu jonjog nang tunda tamani lhopsu lhopchil lhopsu injina yang chungyong goni tamuzgre tandok tena che check sangtajina ta ochu vocal hopsond the konde ta sheir kalo nga tigdmus ta siga chongdiz knita gombina sone chil khmo jang ta saga ya chi ngana chi sone ochi hoptil hopsura chinyang ni tani ta tarangiti dambayu na ta ti gombina sone ta sanji chilkati chi jongwa sigini tena ta saga kwatinchi
tera che su shi sa za ka tarong da na poban gare yo sa ka che poba choma la thomar ngin da ni tanin samju tra shi de la ji jin a.
So there's a few Tibetans who have come along tonight, and first of all, Khenpo would like to offer them a heartfelt greeting and drashi dile.
Nga tso poba zi ji de mer nyong nyong re. The
Tibetan people is it's a small nationality, not so many people, but Khenpo going around the place has only encountered a few of them. However, in terms of the Tibetan cultural tradition, it is widely renowned and supported.
Da kong chwa de cherezena gomba nang chonchon diga chawa zo ki ondela shirdong ga chawa rangnguni na tela de kekaz da ninkaz gi yojire kekad cherezena de da chongchong ni gomba ga surging ga na gomba rang na tane 다 런던 시기다나 이게임즈기다나 근쇼그 되니 총총인데 회나 타이난 나초바가 자바 총총이 조이다나 되니 야라 로첸보고 손디 자와가 시가의 함자rin 조교 때 연던제 되니 지 자와 여부 마용을 말을 신속고 도단 줄고니나 그 곰비를 출자 막투자면 신속고 르네 메시죠 때 다리 밤카 그 제르고나 그 닌카 딘자 요크 이나양 아주 따따 보그너나 되니 자와 총총 같은 머신이나 다 당선 곰바 망치와서 그 자와 기바초 되니 종송래 되니 로총초이나 양 지긴 망보스 그 자와 심도 되니 곰바 그 자와 그 진차데 남지간에 금나 곰바즈기다 파르치를 지 학강 동안이라 막도 되면 teni chawa go teni lorjin da mekyo go nyenka chega yore te ne na mambo ji go ta chawa go jin me chepi cheto ta go gombi na chawa nyongshi zu de yore te jimsa chigre teni jimsa chigda gare go shinso ko lopcha ga na ne te yin rong perna ta shinso ko lopcha lomjang ge me ko ne na parchel lo ni she pden ro teni zor chawa yi go na teni ji shinso ko tang go de shongan da na shika mo zu teni ta jengger gidang teni ngu sonji de go teni chawa yi go na chawa nam tag ge chong chong yin ne ge chusem dan da chaga yang chu kar ge churjin ta de ki me do ji nin ka ga yore ta jimsun mo zo ga teni dangsang ta ri ge shirnayang ta ri ti chawa de lobcher gi man chu chokoyo mar da yin na yang ji changme de la do nong shi go ji jimsun de ra yin sa re.
Campbell said that there are advantages and disadvantages to sending young children to the monastery at such a young age. The advantages are clearly that it enables a young child to engage in memorization and learning and have their personality as a monk shaped very well from a young age. Obviously, on the other hand, it does mean that they're not being exposed to secular education, and it means that they're quite uneducated and perhaps not particularly competent in these realms. However, the reason, I guess, in Tibet that young children have been entered into monasteries at a quite young age in recent times, there has been a period of time when lineages were facing great danger of breaking, and monasteries essentially being empty. And so from that point of view, there was a real need for monks actually, and of course older members of the elder monastic generation also dying. So from that point of view, there was a reason for a monastic population to be introduced. And then secondly, there is the issue that if people become monks or become ordained after they've, say, finished their middle school education or something like that, by this stage they've already been exposed to quite a lot of mundane influences, as it were, and so this doesn't necessarily make for the best conditions to really generate the desire to practice religion, etc. So even though we can see that there are pros and cons, advantages and disadvantages, the reasons for entering young children into the monastery in recent times have been these.
Very, very quick, please.
我刚刚听那个咒语的时候，我听了声音，但是我没有明白什么意思。然后我就想，那只是把声音说出来有用呢，还是明白了心里想的那些好的东西，想的那些才会有用？然后我想到我奶奶，其实她喜欢佛，但她不懂佛，她不学佛学，所以她也在那里祈祷的时候是有用的呢。那如果是有用的话，那就说明不需要懂，那就可以选择上帝，选谁都可以，为什么还要选佛？那如果一定要有用的话，那世界上大部分人他们都不懂佛学，那他们做的祈祷都没有用，那我觉得这也挺可悲的。然后我跟我一个朋友想去做金光弥撒，然后我死之后撒在我身上。那如果只要做了就有用，那我应该挺好的。但是如果做了没有用，只是一定要有那个好的想法，然后都要懂，那我觉得我也是挺完蛋的。所以我就知道到底要怎么样才能有用。
아, 디초 통송 저데 옛날에 그런 거 럭바 못 잡은 거 그런 잡아 죽고 잖아. 대 봄에도.
Campbell said that there's a girl over there who has a question.
당에 저 란디바진데요.
Campbell will answer the question briefly.
다 나추 지탱 그 감난 가레도 오늘 전에가 양난동고 난동 마고나 다리 니밤 톤제영 가레 요래 양 가레도 난동 마고나 베나가추 스만 통제나 만바가 디만 답차디 되는 만 나빠근 통정나 나빠가 디만 뎁차차가 야고 말다 있나요 데 코랑데라 나빠데라 판요그 요래 데네 나다가 생각 가레도 추 난동 마고데나 텔라다리가 되네 칠레를 하고 셔대 결혼은 니바 푸슴 속바지 요래 되네 까때 그런 이 마치나요 다리 정제 나순 지등 코리도 배 야침보다 배 양보인래.
In general, in the world, we need to understand about things, how they work. But of course, there are situations where we do need to understand something in order for it to have efficacy, and in situations where it's not necessary for us to have an understanding. For example, when we take medicine, it's not necessary for us to have a pharmacological knowledge in order for the pill we are taking to have benefit. So it's essentially the same with this mantra, that it can be of benefit essentially in and of itself. However, this is something you're quite free to believe in or not believe in. The world is a big place and there is room for all kinds of ideas.
非常感恩康布还记得我，谢谢谢谢，因为我真的举了很久，谢谢谢谢。然后我这边的太激动了，我这边的问题是这样子的，就是我对于，因为我也看了一些心理的书，然后知道了一些自爱、自我疗愈、自我治疗，就对内自我关照。但同时的话，因为在佛教中讲究大爱，讲究舍己为人，但有的时候就是我是在想是。只在意别人的感受，为了别人放弃自我的关照，为了别人放弃就是自己的感受，就是一味的为众生，还是需要对自己好，对自我自爱的一种基础上，你才能去爱别人。这是我一直以来的困惑。
我做南区务工吧，大人呐，你让的了怎么的，得咱们马切。Zimbabwe chungshi chunga yagre. Tani jan semchin roa sina tela tari perna rangla huiblanga jan tela Zimbabwe na gawa te chichin chiga yagre. Teni na taga shirchubko ta rang dangzan zikida mepa kamure. Reda inaya tari tokba mungu shini na tani nga zikida jiktenga pongchor tamchika jimata dungur tamchika mjoni. 대비전도 더 경력 탐측 그 랑신 잔즈 임바 신이나 근데 럼지 근데 랑 잠바드면나 랑거 등물도 맨조래 근데 싫던 거더 닥즈긴 잠바즈 요래 때 맞추 산지 배운 거 말다 옛날 때라 타르치빈 잠바드 메소니나 근데 럼지 달란 잠바준다 잔락치니나 잔락치교도 더 연던 탐측금 존에 있는데 Tenina deni varna tagum jiratang zapozgoner tela jibtu sanotana ti san tamcha toyonre.
In general, we are orienting ourselves to lessening our clinging to self and orienting ourselves towards the benefit of others. In fact, there's a very profound connection between these two premises. That we have clinging to the self, to our own ego, is it's a fact of being an ordinary human being. But in actual fact, through deep contemplation on essentially our selflessness, etc., it's possible for us to gradually lessen our clinging, in fact, to our egos. And this process actually is connected to very much with the benefiting of others.
So we would like to thank Khenpo Rinpoche very, very much for his talk, for the teachings he's given us. Also to thank everybody who's helped in organising this and making it work. But especially we wish Khenpo Rinpoche a very good, beneficial trip in Europe and the West and a very long continuation of his teaching. Thank you.